Hi friends, so the topic of today's video is a little bit different from what I normally post, but there's something important that I wanted to talk about today. Before I get into things though, I do need to give you a little bit of a content warning because today we're going to be discussing the prevalence of eating disorders as well as fat phobia within the trans community. Now, I know that is a big change from the trans joy-centered content that I normally try to post, but like I said, I think it's important that we take the time to do so. Not only because it has impacted me to a certain extent, but because I know I have a lot of followers in my community who, like me, have come out later in life or are newer to the trans community themselves and may be dealing with these issues. I also wanted to take a moment at the top of the video here to say that if you struggle with any of the issues that we'll talk about today, that you're not alone and that resources are available for your help. If you have a therapist or a mental health counselor that's available to you, that can be a fantastic resource to help. If not, you can find community support or peer support groups can really help a lot as well. There are also a ton of free resources available online, such as at the National Eating Disorder Association and the free 24/7 hotline at Eating Disorder Hope. For me personally, when I first came out publicly, it was well before I started hormones. At the time, I just felt it was important for me to create a safe space in which I could experiment and begin to explore this new identity and presentation that I found. However, in doing so, I got more than one piece of unsolicited advice, especially considering my body. A couple people have told me that I should seriously consider losing a lot of body weight before I started hormones because I wouldn't look healthy. Moreover, as I began to look into HRT and see what other people were doing in their transition before they began, I saw numerous conversations online about people trying to lose as much body weight as they could before they began HRT, as well as going on some pretty extreme and restrictive diets. As someone who, prior to my transition, spent a lot of time dealing with other sorts of body image issues, the language that I was hearing in these conversations was alarming to me for two pretty big reasons. The first was that it became pretty clear that even though this new community that I found myself in was very loving and supportive of each other, that there were still some issues regarding the perceptions of larger bodies in this space. The second was the use of specific language that I was aware of being connected to sort of forms of disordered eating. Now, breaking down the personal and societal factors that lead into fat phobia is probably its own entire separate video, and probably one that is a little bit above my pay grade. Especially if you want to also take into consideration the intersection between internalized fat phobia and gender dysphoria. For me, the line blurred a lot of the times between where body dysmorphia ended and gender dysphoria began, especially before I had more of an education and awareness of how gender dysphoria can present itself. And unfortunately, the way that these two mental health issues play off of each other is really insidious and does lead a lot of trans people towards disordered eating. According to a paper that was published in 2021, lifetime prevalence of eating disorders by self-report of a healthcare provider's diagnosis are 10.5% for transgender men and 8.1% for transgender women in the US. In addition, a more recent study that was published in 2023 says approximately 18% of trans youth reported an eating disorder diagnosis in the past year, compared to 1.8% of cis female youth and 0.2% of male youth. In addition, that study also goes on to confirm the 10.5 and 8.1% figures from the previous study, which is a significant increase from that of the general population. Specifically, it seems like trans women are almost twice as likely to be diagnosed with some form of eating disorder at some point in their lives. Now, you may ask yourself, why is there such a marked increase for the trans populations? Well, according to the study again, trans and gender diverse people may experience gender dysphoria, a significant level of psychological distress that is caused by an incongruence between one's gender identity and their sex assigned at birth. This misalignment between one's gender identity and their primary and secondary sex characteristics is often associated with high levels of dissatisfaction with one's body and general appearance. For many trans and gender diverse individuals, disordered eating can be understood as a method of either suppressing or accentuating gender by changing the shapes of their bodies. Given that some trans and gender diverse individuals may feel their gender dysphoria decrease as a result of restrictive eating and accompanying body changes, studies, there is significant reinforcement around the development and maintenance of eating disorders. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the studies I found were unspecific about where non-binary people fit into their measurement system, or if they were included, which again, unfortunately, is its own separate problem and probably another video that is above my pay grade about the issues around transgender and non-binary medical research. Trans and non-binary people already face so many pressures from society to conform to traditional expectations of masculinity and femininity that, once combined with the internal pressures that might compound if you experience gender dysphoria, I think it's easy to see why so many of us are at a higher risk of developing some form of eating disorder. And while fixing a lot of these issues takes time and change on a societal level, there's still things that you can do to help yourself and those around you in your community right now. Pay attention to what your friends are saying, and if they say anything that sounds alarming to you, have a conversation with them about it. If you're trying to lose weight yourself, watch out for especially restrictive diet plans, as these can really easily steer you down a wrong path. And if you can, make sure you consult with a doctor along the way as well. A lot of times in society, we mischaracterize weight loss as equal to healthy, but in reality, there are a lot of unhealthy ways that an individual can lose weight. Try to be mindful of the health choices that you are making, and remember that there are resources available to help you along the way. But most importantly, honestly, I think we can change how we talk to each other within our community to better encourage body positivity. And I mean that not only towards the fat phobia that may still exist here, but also in how we talk about ourselves and our shared dysphoria experiences. While gender dysphoria is in no ways like a prerequisite to being trans or non-binary, it is an experience that a lot of people in our community can empathize with. And I think as such, the least we can do is to try to be a little more cognizant about the comments we make towards other people's bodies. I know, at least for me, I experienced a certain amount of, I guess I'll call stigma around bodies like mine not being right to transition. And I think the more that we can fight against that stigma and encourage body positivity in our community, the more we're able to enable people to be their more authentic selves and have this experience that all of us have been able to have. So thank you for staying with me. I know that was maybe not as fun of a video as normal, but I do feel like it is important that we had this chat. If you are interested in seeing any more kinds of like essay style content like this, let me know in the comments what kind of topics you want me to discuss. And as always, thank you so much to my Patreon subscribers for helping support my content and the channel. Folks, we're working on a pretty big project for the channel here, and my Patreon subscribers are the first to get any kind of news about it. So if you want to stay up to date with the latest, you can follow the link in my bio and subscribe over there for as little as just $1 a month. That's all I have today. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay beautiful. I'll see you next week.